Good day to you. This is Galactic. Our second presentation of February 3rd. What is consciousness? Is there such a thing as quantum consciousness? Let me ask you a question to get things rolling. What time is it on the moon? If you're hesitating before answering, that is a form of wisdom. Never answer a point-blank question unless you're absolutely sure you understand, first of all, why the question is being asked. And it's most appropriate, if you're not sure if you should answer a question, and my question you should not answer. What should you do instead? Ask a counter question. That can't get you into as much trouble as just simply answering the question, what is the time on the moon? And the reason I bring this up is there is actually a video that you can watch by that name. I just noticed it because, of course, the Google blurb sheet figures out, it reads people's minds and then puts out what it thinks you're going to want to click on next to distract you from your real research. Because the Google A-bot does not think you have a real life. That's how it interprets you. So, what does this have to do with the possibility of quantum consciousness? Is consciousness quantum? You would be very silly to answer that question. First, you would want to ask a counter question. What do you mean by quantum? And perhaps if you got around to it, what do you mean by consciousness? So we do want to attempt our very best, mostly to add something to the racing sheet. Because as you know, this is one of the most popular topics, probably of all time. There are several contenders. I would put reality right at the top. A most interesting term is reality. But if you look at things, I'll just say from one perspective I find helpful, is that however you end up defining reality, you know you're going to have consciousness in there somewhere. Well, it's also vice versa. If you're going to define consciousness, it's going to be from a perspective of reality. That may not seem apparent right away until you force yourself to try to actually make the definition. This is one of the most difficult things to do in science when the right conditions prevail, as they definitely do today, because we're at the edge of what can be measured, perceived, conceptualized, perceptualized, or sometimes even imagined. Infinity is just as hard to imagine as it ever was. Although in the prior video I showed you how to rationalize infinity, not because I came up with some brand new goofy, springy math system, but simply by observing how the universe herself rationalizes infinity for us. That's called science. That's what I do. And since I have such a powerful, overbearing aspect on science, which very few physicists share, and no mathematicians can possibly share, because they simply can't accept my premises, well, that's too bad. So I do have this incredibly powerful mind now. I'm trying to rub the mathematicians the wrong way so that I'll get a response. I'm trying to get a response. I'm not just barking into this microphone to hear myself bark, although I still insist, even in my own thoughts, that I do this for myself, and I do it even if there were no listeners. That's certainly how it started out, because I love doing this. This really helps me. I am not just saying that, although it's starting to wear thin, because where's your paper, I mean, really, I'm just first of all, I'm 70 years old. I'm retired. I am so happy. I literally cry. When I pray, I just am thanking God every morning and night. I've been doing that for years, if not decades. I just am very, very happy. I'm just a naturally happy, stable person. But a happy, stable person can be called upon by heaven to perform a service. It's just that in my case, I don't care what the price is. I'm very happy to serve heaven. One always can count the cost, and this is something a Christian is instructed to do. That is, someone who listens to the words of Yeshua. Well, he said, count the cost. He didn't say count the cost and give up. He told you and I to count the cost and then give in, because heaven is never wrong. Only humans can be wrong, and humans are virtually always wrong. Well, we still have our duty, just as living beings, actually rational entities. That's the approach I take. It is religious, the way I approach it, because I approach everything religiously. But without going into that kind of bracketing information, I do want to execute for you some more proof that my new system of geometry, my new system of mathematics, and my new perspective on physics, reality, and consciousness is so powerful and so explanatory and so superior to anything you can find anywhere else that I'm actually in a class by myself. And I'm staring now into the camera. Yeah, you know there's a flaw somewhere. Yes, everything is a trade-off, and I understand my limitations. Well, I'd better, or I'm going to hell. With what I know, if I actually did, just like become megalomaniac, that's a misuse of the gifts of heaven. But I do want to tell you what consciousness is, because I know that you'd love to know that. And if you don't think that you don't think that you would love to know that, I will prove you wrong. Oh no, science, at my level of science, it's aggressive. We don't take prisoners and we don't take no for an answer. We don't accept argumentation anymore. Once you cross the finish line and you have the solutions, now you're taking heads. Now you're breaking egos. What you never want to do, and I'm dead serious on this, never try to break the bank. Never attack a man's position such that it might come back at him with a loss of income. And that includes loss of popularity. If you want to make fun of top-notch thinkers, as I certainly want to do, because they're assholes and liars, you never, ever want to interfere with their job. If it's a professor, you're not trying to take away his professorship, or he has a right to come back at you with something harder than your hard words. Now, in my case, I never take that chance. It was Dave Chappelle who gave me the story, and I have this in prior videos, but you may know the story if you don't. It's worthwhile to know the story that Dave Chappelle says, whose punchline is, never stand between a man and his next meal. I never do that. So when I attack Tim Maudlin, it's a respectful attack. Of course, you're attacking to hurt. You are trying, but you're not attacking the ego. What you want to hurt in the person you're attacking, what you want to hurt is their pride. You want to make them cry. You want to make them sweat. Because you want to make it so that the only way out for that dumb shit is to come clean and add their voice to the fact that Great Uncle Sam got it. And that makes you a dunce cap. And if you resist me, I'm sorry. You're not going to resist me. That's the frame of mind. Now, even that's a bit dangerous, wouldn't you say? When a man reaches the age of 70 and has seen the things that I see, and I know what's right and what's wrong and what's good and what's bad and what's true and what's false, that's called a wise man. Now, a human can always be wrong. But if you have the truth, one of the laws of the universe, the laws of God Almighty, as handed down to rational scientists, is you have to share. You have to share. Yeshua did. Yeshua shared his healing powers, knowing it would get him killed. Right? Well, I'm no less than my master. It's not a form of pomposity or pretension. It's not a form of aggression. It's a form of salvation to correct these jackasses. So what is quantum consciousness? I'm just going to give you an example of the unbelievable power of what I've discovered in rational logic, using mathematics and geometry to simply figure out the dynamic system of the universe. Well, now I can answer all the questions about reality and consciousness. No one else can. They'll get stupid answers. So let's begin with the most likely answer. That comes from Sir Roger Penrose, one of my heroes. I own 2 of his books that are written on the nature of quantum consciousness. So what does Sir Roger Penrose say about quantum consciousness? He confesses, I follow Sir Roger quite closely. I've read his book, Road to Reality, and worn out the binding so that the binding snapped and it's folded and written on in so many places. It's fairly obvious from my copy of The Road to Reality that I'm vastly interested in Sir Roger's mathematics, because he certainly shows to me that he knows how to explain it. He makes excellent diagrams, and he freehand draws them. But what Sir Roger can be found to say about quantum consciousness is virtually the only rational approach to consciousness on the market. Deepak Chopra offers a sort of a homeopathic approach, but it's not comprehensive. It's medical. It's to give you a chance to use your brain power to make yourself happier. That's not science. That's religion. Or something way less than science. What about Sir Roger? What's my impression of Sir Roger's quantum consciousness? Well, first of all, he doesn't fall for that shit. I'm the one who will tell you about quantum consciousness. Sir Roger wouldn't touch such a stupid idea. What he's attempting to show is scientific evidence that there is such a thing as a quantum level of activity in the brain. And there is a certain amount of evidence that supports that. I personally find it inconclusive, but I personally share a fascination with Sir Roger about microtubules and stacked coherent water molecules inside the structures inside really the cells of the brain and actually the whole body, which suggests quantum activity. But the problem with saying that is nobody knows what that means. And what you're saying is that it's something beyond the threshold of science. There is some logic in doing that. That may sound hazardous, of course it is. It may sound foolish. That it is not, although it usually ends up being proved foolish later. But when nobody can prove anything, there's a legitimate open field for hypothesis. Really, as harebrained as you like, but there are certain rules that constrain hypothesization and theorization. Some theories don't even get out the gate because they can't make a prima facie case. That's the case of so many prevalent theories right now. You would be amazed at the list, and only I can tell you the full list. It's almost everything that science thinks it knows. I'm always in context talking about cosmic science, which has 2 levels. The edge, which is spatial infinity, that's cosmology, and the center, which is the quantum paradox. All right, so what about quantum consciousness? Nobody yet has even dreamt of such a thing as quantum consciousness. What is meant is is the application of open-ended quantum theorization to the phenomenon of consciousness which can't even be defined. Nobody knows what consciousness actually is, which is one of the most amazing oxymoronic statements. It's virtually a direct contradiction, because it can be proved that I would have to have consciousness and know something about what consciousness is to deny that anybody knows anything about it. So consciousness is what's called an involute paradox. It's the paradox of involution. And you can find this in certain of Escher's paintings, particularly the staircase that keeps going up with certain other visual paradoxes is what they are. The reason why those, and there's a very simple one, which I used to see in Mad Magazine, but it's actually attributable to the mathematicians. It's a triangle, but if you've seen it, you know that it's the strangest triangle. And what's remarkable about it is that it is so easy to draw. But it takes advantage of the difference between flat screen perception and depth perception, where we interpolate certain visual clues into the flat screen, which is all we see, in order to obtain a notion of depth. And that can lead to some really, really amazing visual paradoxes. Well, the same kind of involution, which is really kind of like a Ouroboros chasing its tail forever. It's a form of infinite regression, as most paradoxes are, at least in mathematical or geometrical paradoxes. But the paradox of consciousness goes right to the heart of reality, which is why I insist, if you want to get a grip on a paradox, see if you can find the counter-paradox. I've found it to be a rule, although I have not yet been able to prove that it's a law. But what happens when you try to solve a paradox, and it has to be a paradox that has a solution, because some paradoxes, and you may not know if it has a solution or not, but in the case of consciousness, it is a paradox of involution. And to solve a paradox of that nature, by the way, so is the quantum paradox. And I'll show that to you in a moment. Because we're not really after the definition of consciousness, we're after the definition of the quantum and of quantum mechanics, and the ultimate solution is quantum dynamics. Quantum simply means you've gotten to the root of things, you've gotten the atomicity of your system, which is not necessarily a particle. It is also a number in numerics, like the Planck length, or light speed. That's getting to the atomicity of things. That's what you want in order to get universal frame of reference, which is what all of science is after, is one step beyond general relativity. Well, I've taken that step and I now have universal relativistic frame, which changes everything. It changes the whole meaning of relativity. Although not, it's superpositional, so that's another important term. But this is an involution. The nature of consciousness can really only be discerned by a consciousness. That's the first thing you want to observe. But to complete the thought, consciousness is an involution paradox that what you want to find, if you can, is the dual paradox that's allied with. In other words, you find the second paradox that's the opposite in some way. I prefer to say the conjugal paradox. Well, if what you're looking at is the idea of consciousness, which is an infinitesimal, you're actually trying to find a point. Although it may be a surface, which we're getting there, but a point and a surface are closely related in the quantum world. But what is consciousness? It's closer to, well, it forms a center to a human. It's inside your head. It's not inside your butt. Although many jokes could be made, especially of and by and for Americans, about where your mind actually is. We have a saying in America, and forgive me, but this is the true heritage of brutal America, that some people have their head up their ass. Now that's physiologically impossible. Although I think it actually has been tried by certain yogis. But I mean, it's a fool's errand to stick your head up your ass. That's not what is meant by that expression. What is meant is that your focus of consciousness is not where it should be. It's not behind your eyes and between your ears and, inside your brain where your consciousness is supposed to be. Instead, it's down where you do doo-doo and pee-pee. And really inside the doo-doo chute, which Sipowicz called the dirt chute, which I always thought was much better than ass or asshole. I mean, my God, just how grotesque are you willing to reduce yourself? I feel soiled. Even having mentioned that nasty, stupid saying, is your head up your ass? Well, the point is that your consciousness is localized. All right, now what about reality? That's the counter paradox. That's the conjugal paradox that goes with consciousness. And the reason nobody is able to even get to square one in talking about consciousness is because its definition is its own opposite. Because you can think of consciousness as being the quantum of you. It's a point consciousness. It certainly isn't a field. It's a point inside your head. If you want to be Eastern about it, it's your entire head, which I find profound, that your whole head, like picture it on a pike just being paraded around through the city. There's his consciousness. We got him. So that's your consciousness is not extensive. What about reality? Reality has no center. Reality is the opposite of anything quantum. Reality is continuity itself. It's the continuity of the universe. That's reality. And so your consciousness and reality are opposites. Just like electricity and magnetism that make electromagnetism that makes light. Well, the combination of your center of consciousness with reality is the definition of both. The definition of consciousness. Your consciousness, or any consciousness, even if it's of a plant. Some people even say the rocks. But we don't go that far because we're rational. We're just talking about people, humans. Your consciousness. What is that? How do you define that? It's that which perceives reality. That's what consciousness is. It's what perceives reality. Well, now you're in the bowels of the paradox, because now you're forced to answer the question, what is reality? I have the answer. I have the answer. Reality is whatever your consciousness says it is. And that is the answer, both to the question, what is consciousness, and what is reality. They always go together. They never occur by themselves. And if you're not looking at the moon, that moon is not part of your reality. Unless you say it is. The same thing is true of Alice's Kingdom, Alice in Wonderland. If you think that Disneyland inside your head is real, it is. And that's called psychosis. What percentage of you do you think is psychotic? How much of your conscious makeup is psychotic? Well, you don't know, do you? Because you don't know what you've been trained to believe is real. You may be so positive there is no God that I don't even want to hear anything about God. Then in your reality, there is no God. And that means that your future is extraordinarily bleak. But just because you make up a God out of your mind, like biocentrism, that is not necessarily universal frame of reference. So when you're talking about consciousness, what you want to find out is the universal reference frame of consciousness. Well, in science, what we're trying to get is the universal reference frame of reality. But that's extraordinarily difficult to define. Physical reality. That's what I've done. That's called science. Now I know everything. More than Sir Roger Penrose, Sir Isaac Newton, and Herr Albert Einstein combined. I'm so far beyond the pathetic playboy Richard Feynman that he's Felix Leiter compared to my James Bond. So that's a little bit of science for you on the light-hearted side, because I have been so intense with you lately, forcing you to learn mathematics, which I know you don't want. Geometry, you don't know how to even concentrate on it. And all the other magnificent discoveries that I've made in deep space and at the heart of the quantum and the electrodynamic balance system and the nature of the number system and so much other profound material. It's just a little bit beyond you, isn't it? Yes, well, it would have to be, since I'm above all the other scientists and mathematicians. So I thought you should know some practical value of knowing some wisdom, which comes from training your mind to the universe. No mathematician does that, and physicists have a damnable time, because all of their training makes them Mickey Mice or Mickey Mises. I am not that way. I am gifted by the universe with the ability to think clearly. They just don't have that gift. That doesn't entitle me to look down on them. But in science, it forces me to pull their fucking pants down while they're trying to trick everybody else. I'm not trying to trick you. Am I? They are! So that's my little blurb. I can answer any question. And that fake super genius that's been on the circuit, he's dog shit. All your professors are bitchwads compared with me. But if I took credit and left it at that, my soul is forfeit. The only reason I can have such pomposity in your face, first of all, it's because you need it. I'm doing you a favor. But the reason I have to be so cruel is because these men are dangerous. And I'm the equivalent of the good guy. And I hope you're able to bring your gifts forward and lay them at my feet. Do I ask for money? Who out on YouTube does not ask for money? So you know my heart is pure. But there's still a catch there. Maybe I'm lonely, and all I need is just a little attention. And if somebody would just leave a comment, it would make my life so much brighter. Nope, I don't need you. I'll never need you. Because so I hope you enjoyed our little excursion into quantum consciousness, but I haven't really told you everything, have I? What do I mean by quantum consciousness? Your consciousness is a point, but it's not a Euclidean point. It's a universal point, which partakes of both space and time. But now you know that your perception of time comes from energy. Let me ask you something. Are you alive? Well, that means you're moving through time. At what speed are you moving through time? You're moving through time at the speed of light. Or you wouldn't be able to see light, would you? Because don't you have to vibrate at the speed of light to see it? You think about that. You leave a comment. Oh, it goes right to the head. I wanted to say something so cruel and crushing. Because you trust me, and it would make you laugh. Well, I may not want you to laugh. Alright, well, keep looking up. We'll be right back with the collapse of the wave function and the definition of the quantum of gravity, solving everything. So stay tuned.